Unit Coordinator for Peninsula for EDF4100. Today we're going to be talking about educational inquiry. Now before I do that, I just want to I guess warn you that this will not be a professional video, and this is very much a conversation. I'll be using some slides, but just to start the conversation in regards to our topic, which is educational inquiry, begin the conversation so that something that you can then think about when you're reading your textbook or any other associated readings, and then actually working through these sorts of things in the tutorial class. So educational inquiry, I'm sure you've heard a lot about inquiry because actually inquiry has gained a lot of attention, I think, more recently in programs like the International Baccalaureate, and now there's programs that start from early years, primary and secondary, that really kind of take this idea of inquiry and inquiry-based learning to really encourage student learning through this idea that these inquiring minds, and that we ask questions. Not only do we ask questions, but we systematically then try to find answers. So this idea of inquiry, and actually it's starting in as early as young children, is really important, because often when we think of research, we think of it very separate from this idea of inquiry, but that's really, research is, and particularly in education, is educational inquiry. It's this idea that we ask questions, particularly in regards to our own teaching and in student learning, and we try to find a systematic way to investigate it. So just a little bit about inquiry. I think young children get inquiry. I don't know how many of you have younger sisters or children, sisters or brothers, or children yourselves, but I have two boys, 3 and 5, and they ask questions all the time. And it's funny because some of these questions are, off the wall, but some of them are really fascinating, and just trying to see, I get a glimpse of their thinking and some of the questions they ask. So I've put a few things down here that recently my children have asked. So one question is, why do people have hair on their heads? Okay. Or where does the sun go when we are sleeping? And then this was the very interesting one recently, where do kittens come out? Now, some of these questions can be difficult to answer, but it's actually been really interesting to watch my children. So, for example, where do the kittens come out? There's this stray cat that ended up coming to our house, and they were trying to decide if it was a boy or a girl, and then they decided that it was a girl, and this is obviously based on no fact, but it was a girl and that it was going to have kittens. But then they started asking the question of where do they come out, which, as a supportive parent, I said, well, what do you think? So they started then investigating and inspecting the cat and trying to figure out where kittens came out. Now, of course, there could have been a very awkward conversation with my children, but one of the things that the inquiry does, and it provides our ownership of something that we're interested in, and then we can actually investigate it. So my children loved this idea that not only I didn't just tell them the answer, but they could actually try to figure it out themselves. They took ownership of the inquiry process. They and they came up with their own ideas. And we often, as teachers, feel like we have to have an answer, a definite answer, a quick and definite answer right away. But actually, this idea of inquiry builds a lot of ownership within students. So this idea of asking questions, I know with my children sometimes I wish they would stop asking questions. They ask questions all the time, which as a parent I have to be very careful to say, no, actually questions are good, and that keeps these habits of inquiring and this world of wonder and asking questions. I love that. To them there is, and for me it seems so innocent, but for them it's this, everything is a learning journey. So asking questions, but also questioning the question. And sometimes in this world of compliance that we live in now, we don't always question the question. We don't always ask questions that are a little bit problematic or that are tackling big ideas. But this is part of educational inquiry. Inquiry is also about desiring not just to know, but to understand. And that's a really big thing. I mentioned that as teachers, we often just want a quick answer so we can move on to the answer a student's question so we can move on. But there's a difference between just wanting to know the answer and then also wanting to understand the answer. Those are two very different things. So it's not about a quick answer, but it's a journey, it's a process. And that process then leads us to what is true. And that is really the heart of research, is this, it's a journey. And I think for some of you who might kind of either be worrying or anxious about this unit, I think that the great thing about this unit is, one, you get some ownership to choose a topic that's interesting to you. And then you go through this journey and process that is very much you are front and center of. And in university, you don't always get that opportunity. You often have these set assignments or tasks that have already been chosen for you. So it is a journey and a process, and it's very, very fascinating. Speculating why something works or does not work. So this idea of, problem solving is also at the heart of inquiry. As I mentioned, I think before, when we're older, we kind of stop asking questions. And I don't really know why that is. And I think part of it is we often do like just a quick answer. But this is, I think, really important for teachers, is that we need to ask questions, and we need to continue to look at our classroom practices, our pedagogy, our students, and try to identify things that we can either improve or just ask questions. Why does this happen? And I think that's not only important for our students and to encourage learning, but it's also important for us because teaching is a fabulous, fabulous career. But if you want it to be interesting and exciting 30 years from now, you have to ensure that you understand and that you are always going through the process of inquiry in your classroom. And that's what will keep you, keep your teaching meaningful, but also can help you to continue to be passionate about teaching. Now, teacher research. This idea of teacher research, there's a book by Freeman, and he, actually I have it right here. This book is called Doing Teacher Research, and the funny thing is I actually, this was a really important book when I did my master's, and I did an action research project for my master's, and so I read a lot about Donald Freeman. And at the time that Donald Freeman wrote this book, this idea of teacher research and classroom research was kind of, I guess, trendy. And he describes teacher research as the uniting of two distinctive parts of teaching, the doing and the wondering. And I love that. I love that idea that teacher research is the doing, which we often kind of relate to teaching. We're teaching, we're doing, we're encouraging student learning. But then it also combines wondering. And I think that those two are so important, to see that there's the uniting and the combination of those two things. And Freeman also says, teaching is generally concerned with doing things so others learn. Research is concerned with asking questions, examining phenomena, and documenting understandings for why things happen as they do. Now, I think these two things go hand in hand, and if we want our teaching to not only be relevant, particularly as we get older, we are having to learn new things, but we have to continue wondering. That is really important to being a good teacher. Another quote I wanted to share with you is, research enables us to see things about children and ourselves as practitioners in new and different ways, to challenge our habitual patterns of thinking and to possibly act in new ways. Now, I know that some of you would have had, I think probably all of us have had a teacher where you think, oh, come on, retire or do something, go do another job, because it appears that they really don't enjoy teaching. And they've been doing the same things that they have been doing for the last 20 years or even 5 years. And I think teacher research it challenges that idea of habitual patterns of thinking, and that there's always new ways of thinking, and there's always new things to incorporate in our classrooms. And that will keep you passionate and excited about teaching. Now, this week, the main thing that you need to really figure out is your research topic. These next few weeks are going to go really quickly. So you need to decide a research topic. And there's quite a bit of, like I said, you have ownership of trying to decide something that you're already interested in. And it's already connected to some, maybe something that happened in one of your placements or something that you have observed. So the question is, will anyone care about the answer? So let's say you're thinking about a topic and you want to find out more about that. Will anyone care about it? Now this is important because research, well, in this idea of educational inquiry, it needs to matter. Whether it's just to you and your students, that's fine, but it does need to matter. So does it matter to you, and why? And this will be an important part of your first assignment, is saying why you chose a particular topic. Why does it matter? Why is it important? And the other thing that's really important to think about is principles. You are fourth-year students, and you are going to be preparing for writing key selection criteria and then interviewing for jobs. So what makes you different from all of the other students that have just graduated and are looking for teaching jobs? And I'm going to go out there and say that I think this could be that thing that's different. So you want to be thinking about something that people care about, that you think, oh wow, it's really interesting. I would love to hear more about that. This is an opportunity for you to really capture your audience in regards to these interviews and key selection criteria, because it's something that's a bit different. It makes you a little bit different than everyone else. Another question that you're going to need to ask is the problem, if it's a problem or issue, solvable within the unit timeframes and the teaching context? Some of you will have some fabulous ideas, but just are not doable within the time frame and within the context that we have. So most of you will be doing your placement, and that's where you will collect your data. That's where you will do your research. But remember, that's in semester 2 that you'll be doing that. So you really need to kind of think about, is it, because some people think of these big, huge ideas, and that's great, but it's just too big. So you need to also kind of make sure that it's doable. And this is something that your tutors will be helping you to try to help kind of make something that is manageable. Do I have access to the data needed to answer my questions about this topic? Now, one of the, if you don't really know where your placement is, or you don't know where you're going to be collecting your data, one of the things that's very easy to think of is you are accessible. So you have your own reflections, you have those sorts of things. Also documents, public documents are very accessible. So you do need to think about access, because some of you might think about wanting to include students and so on, but there are processes that you will have to follow if you do decide to include teachers, or so you need to think about how easily accessible is some of the data that you want to use in the context of whether it's your placement or so on. And then and this kind of follows to, what do I need permission for? So if you are going to talk or observe, or observe you can kind of get away with, but particularly talk with students, you're going to need to get permission from the student, and you're going to need permission from the parents. So this is just something to think about, because there will be particular forms that you're going to have to give them. So if you do incorporate students into your research, you will have to provide those permission forms, or what we call consent forms, and we'll be going through that in your tutorials. So do think about the data that you have access to, and then the possible participants that you will have access to as well. Have a wonderful week. We have some great tutorials planned for you in regards of looking at actual examples of teacher research. But this week, think about a research topic that you want to do. Start looking around at some articles that has done a research study on this particular topic, and bring it for next week. Have a great week.